welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is the next installment of the incredible series by Mr. Outlaw. As ever, please do let me know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. Entitled, I was contracted to help conceal a UFO crash. Part 4. Let's get straight into that. I've only been to Russia a few times before, but there is one solid conclusion I can draw about the country. Where it's one of the hardest places to complete contracts. The targets are usually hell to put down, and my heart feels like it's seconds away from detonating at all times. I do enjoy drinking over there though. I managed to get some sleep on the flight over. That would have been impossible had I not been tired to the point of delusion. Our ride came in the form of a clunky old cargo plane that only had sitting space for pilots. I think I banged my head on about 15 crates before I woke up. There's no flights to Norilsk, and I can't really take a government-owned aircraft without arousing suspicion, so I had to call in a favor from an old friend, the agent explained. I'm sure he could see the trepidation on my face. Look, that's the best I could do. I suppose it didn't matter. The plane wasn't the biggest issue. It was what we were bound to see once we got off that worried me the most. Along with the agent and the pilots, there were 2 others on the plane with us. Another SAC agent named Armin and a Green Beret named Luke. 4 wasn't exactly the biggest team, but the agent assured me that we were rendezvousing with the rest once we got to our destination. Now the flight was mostly silent and a bit awkward. So, what do I call you? I asked the agent in an attempt to make small talk. You don't have to tell me your real name. Just give me something so it doesn't get weird. And the agent leaned his head back as if he were thinking about it. It's Colt. That's my real name, by the way. I trust you enough. He flashed a corny grin at me. I nodded in response. Colt, it is. And we landed on a small airstrip in the middle of what looked like a remote field. I was hit with freezing rain the moment I stepped out of the plane, which managed to wake me up a bit. I looked around, but there was quite literally nothing surrounding us. You sure we're in the right place? Luke asked. Doesn't look like there's too much going on here. And Cole looked at one of the pilots, an older, weary-looking gentleman, and nodded. The man lumbered out of the plane and began walking towards a nearby forest. This way, he said in a thick accent. It's just short walk. I underestimated what he meant by short. We walked for about 3 hours into the middle of the forest, while lugging around 20 pounds of gear and being drenched by ice-cold precipitation. At one point, we came across some large, pill-shaped object stuck in the trees. It'll make sense later, Colt said when he saw me looking up at it. Just keep walking for now. After the arduous hike, the pilot finally stopped in a clearing and took out a metal detector. He scanned the ground for a bit before gesturing for the shovel that Colt was holding. After about a minute of digging, he uncovered something that looked like the entrance to a vault. Still there, he said, chuckling. Many bad memories here. He entered the code into the keypad and it opened, revealing a metal ladder leading down into oblivion. He took a deep breath as he got up before putting his hand on Colt's shoulder. I'll be waiting in the plane. Good luck, my friend. And Colt nodded. 6 p.m. If we're not back by then, just leave. The pilot gave him one last glance before walking out of the clearing and out of sight. He didn't look so confident. Well, Colt said, turning on his helmet flashlight. Time to enter the belly of the beast. I couldn't tell you how long the climb down was. I just knew that my arms were jelly by the end. There was also an indescribable smell lingering in the air. It wasn't putrid per se. It just felt like something I wasn't supposed to be breathing in. After scaling down the ladder, we found ourselves in some kind of underground military complex. It's an old KGB base, Colt explained. Repurposed for modern-day Spetsnaz training. Spetsnaz? I asked. Is it a good idea to show up unannounced? Colt looked down at his watch. If everything's gone according to plan, then we should be fine. Huh, how could I not be confident when you put it like that? I muttered. He started moving and we followed, passing through rooms that contained weightlifting equipment, shooting ranges, and mats for hand-to-hand training. Eventually, we came across the dining hall. I'll admit, I was a bit taken aback by what we found waiting for us. What the hell happened here? Luke asked. It was a bloodbath inside. Standing amongst the plates of spilt food and drink, there were about 20 soldiers and agents, and with 5 more dead on the ground. I assume the latter half were our guys. The ones who were dead were all Spetsnaz. Oh, jeez, Colt muttered as he stared at a grisly scene around him. One of the non-Spetsnaz soldiers looked over at us. He was average height and incredibly handsome, save for the gnarly scar running through one of his eyes. What the hell did you expect? He said, with a slight Dutch accent. We're lucky it only got this bad. And saying that everybody looked on edge would be an understatement. You showed them what the serum can do and they still didn't believe you? Colt said, stepping forward. Most did, the soldier responded. Not all. We should have expected that from the start. Well, do they believe you now? Well, the soldier looked over his shoulder at the group of angry Spetsnaz behind him. He nodded at them. A few nodded back and a few cursed at him in Russian. I guess, I mean, they stopped trying to kill us at least. So, we stopped killing them. And Colt sighed and shook his head. Fuck's sake, Vasir, he muttered, before gesturing to Luke, Armin, and I. In any case, these are the new guys, all quite capable, if I do say so myself. They are on the serum? This soldier, whose name was apparently Vasir, asked, and Colt nodded. The soldier walked forward and extended his arm, shaking each of our hands in quick succession. Like Colt mentioned, my name's Vasir, he said. I'm glad you guys chose to be a part of this. We need all the help that we can get. He went on to fill us in on what was happening. Similar to Colt, Vasir was an SAC agent acting as a mole inside of Kane's faction. After some lingering, he became privy to the time and location of Kane's second attack. The first one was in the US, at a Colt base. The second in Russia, at a Spetsnaz complex. If the Russian government were led to believe that aliens had landed on Earth and subsequently slaughtered an entire unit of their soldiers. And Kane's plan to make the world believe that they were in imminent danger would become one step closer to reality. That object, in the forest, I said. That's supposed to be a UFO, isn't it? It was planted there. Vasir nodded. You couldn't be more correct. The man's running an intricate operation, which is why we got to put a wrench in it as fast and as hard as we can. So, what happens next? Luke asked. In about an hour, Kane's forces are gonna storm the place, Vasir responded. They're going to do the same thing they did to your team? Colt added. Have his super soldiers kill all the Spetsnaz and then inject them with a necrotic agent? The deadly aliens strike again, and nobody's safe. Not even some of the most skilled soldiers in the world. The US government will eventually find out and compare the incident to what happened in Montana, Vassir continued. And it's going to keep happening all around the world, until there is only one conclusion left to draw. We tried to explain the situation, another non-Spetsnaz soldier added. But like hell they were going to believe us. Russians are so pretty rusty. We believe in you now, one of the Spetsnaz said in English, stepping towards us. But only for now, if what you are saying does not happen. His face suddenly morphed into a vicious sneer. Will, you've killed 5 of my men. I don't care what drugs you've taken to become so strong. We will fight back. I heard one of the Spetsnaz in the back shout something to the effect of, And you couldn't bring any of that for us? Sounds good, Chief, Vassir replied, ignoring the outburst. But I promise you, we're saving lives here. Now, the Russian soldier didn't seem impressed. Nevertheless, he stepped back for the time being. So, from what it sounds like, they won't be expecting us, right? Armin asked. I think it was the first time I'd ever heard him speak. And Vassir nodded affirmatively. Good, Armin responded. Make our job simpler. What's the size of the force coming for us? I asked. That was something I couldn't confirm, Vassir responded. But we've got 12 guys on the serum here. We should be fine. I nearly forgot about that. The enemy was superhuman, but so were we. So, what are these? I said, holding up my rifle. Decorations? Vassir grinned. We're going old school, baby. He rolled up his sleeves, showing off his wrapped wrists. Hope you've kept up with your hand-to-hand training. Well, the rest of the soldiers followed suit, dropping their weapons and beginning to stretch out their limbs. There's a reason I preferred assassinations from a distance. I wasn't a fan of getting punched in the face and tossed into walls. But I suppose there was no getting out of this one. Vassir walked over and tossed me a set of hand wraps. We might hit hard, but we're hitting pretty hard targets as well. Don't want a broken wrist. The Spetsnaz soldiers hung back as the rest of us moved to the front. I already knew I was going to be hurting like hell by the end, and so I prepared myself mentally. I'd been pummeled to near death a few times before, and I couldn't really afford to lose any more brain cells. Vassir tapped his watch as the hour dwindled, and soon enough we started hearing movement coming from the corridor up ahead. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes and clenched my fists. I told myself that I was about to do something good, something that would benefit humanity in the long run. And for a moment, that made me feel better. That feeling faded quickly when I looked at what had appeared in front of us. A horde of unfathomable creatures had gathered in the dining hall entrance. Their dark grey bodies were centipede-like, and with a sizable stinger at the end of the tails. Their torsos were thick and slimy, and with 4 veiny, beefy arms attached to the sides. Their fists were the size of bowling balls, and they had 2 circular mouths lined with sharp teeth on either side of their face, and with 3 sets of glowing, piercing eyes on top. Their hairs were wild and spiky, almost like blades jutting out from the top of their heads. Of course, none of us knew how to react. I looked over, watching as Colt's expression turned blank. What the fuck? Before he could even finish the sentence, the creatures began charging at us, shrieking so loud it felt like my brain was shaking. And safe to say, I don't think this was a part of the plan. I was contracted to help Conceal a UFO crash. Part 5. Let's get straight into that. God grief, Colt muttered. Things just can't be simple for once, can they? Well, the creatures were slow in their approach, but not as if they were sizing us up. There was something peculiar about the way that they moved. Not quite like predators hunting prey, more like a drone approaching its target. Their movements seemed calculated, methodical, almost robotic. You said no aliens, one of the Spetsnaz yelled out from the back. So what the hell is this? This doesn't change much, Colt said. These things are still here to kill you guys, and we're here to stop them. While the creatures continued advancing at a steady pace, I looked back at our rifles, which were laid out on tables. No matter how strong I'd become, the last thing I wanted to do was fight these things with my bare hands. Shit! I turned back around, seeing that the creatures had begun charging. And I clenched my fists. It didn't really look like I had a choice. I stepped forward as one of them lunged at me. I could only comprehend just how massive the thing was once I got up close to it. Not only did it tower over me, its body was well over 10 feet long. I twisted my hips and punched its head. It certainly did some damage, but at the cost of my knuckles shattering. A few seconds into the fight and I was already in deep shit. I jumped back due to the pain, but the creature, it just kept charging. It raised its stinger, and I was ill-prepared to block it. It stabbed me in the arm, not quite penetrating my skin. It still hurt like hell though. I could see something dripping out of the tip as the creature pulled the stinger back. Some kind of dark green fluid. I rushed forward and tried to put in the creature into a standing choke before it could strike again. It didn't work. The creature slammed me in the abdomen with one of its arms, sending me backwards and leaving me breathless. Fuck this, I muttered. I pulled myself up and rushed over towards one of the rifles. I aimed the barrel at the creature's head and began spraying. Even though just about every bullet hit dead on, the abomination still wouldn't go down. Its head would snap back slightly with every impact, as bits of its skin and flesh exploded, and dark, coloured blood spilled to the floor as it continued pressing forward, seemingly unbothered by the injuries. I cursed again and reloaded, before once again emptying the entire magazine into its face. Now it finally dropped this time, and even then, it still wasn't fully dead, jerking and writhing around on the floor. I clutched the rifle like a bat and slammed it into the back of the creature's head until it broke. And that finally managed to finish it off for good. The adrenaline rush was so intense that it took me a second to notice it. There was something sticking out of the creature's flesh. I approached the corpse cautiously in order to get a closer look. I wasn't seeing things. Buried within the bone, cartilage and tissue appeared to be wires, as if it was some type of robot. And before I could inspect any further, another of these things lunged at me. I leapt back before gauging the situation around me. I spotted Colt fighting off 2 of the creatures at once, bare-handed, and there were 4 more lying limp around him. The guy was a monster himself. However, the rest of us weren't doing so well. Luke was trying his hardest not to get pummeled, while Armin was thrashing on the floor, trying not to be strangled. Strangulation? I wouldn't have expected these creatures to resort to something like that. Everybody else was facing a similar struggle. The only one holding their own was Colt. But there was also somebody missing, somebody I couldn't immediately spot. "You looking for something?" a voice said from behind me. I turned around, seeing Vasir with a wicked grin on his face. "Vasir, what the hell?" He interrupted by punching me hard in the throat. I began gasping for air as I fell to my knees. I looked up, watching as he casually strolled away, before walking up to Luke and unceremoniously breaking his arm. I tried standing up, but ended up getting knocked back down by one of the creatures. I could hardly fight back as it wrapped its massive hands around my throat, simultaneously drilling its stinger into my leg. And this time, it had managed to break the skin. What it was trying to do wasn't a mystery. It was injecting a necrotic agent into my veins. To my surprise, it let go of my throat before I passed out completely. In retrospect, it made sense. These things were probably programmed to move on after the injection was completed. I sat up, struggling to funnel air into my lungs, and looked around again, watching as Vasir effortlessly subdued the rest of our team. At the same time, the creatures seemed to be completely ignoring him. Eventually, he made his way over to Colt, who still had his hands full with multiple creatures. Colt screamed something at him, but I couldn't hear what he said. Vasir responded by punching him in the face. Now, compared to the rest of us, it took him a little longer to take Colt down, but he still managed to do it without breaking much of a sweat. It also didn't help that Colt was being tag-teamed by the creatures. With our team entirely down for the count, the creatures turned their attention towards the Spetsnaz, who had been witnessing the entire ordeal at the back. These guys were done for, I thought to myself. Fighting these creatures was a hellish experience, even with the serum. I could only imagine facing them in my normal state. It'd be a complete and utter slaughter. However, the Spetsnaz didn't seem worried at all. There was no fear in their expressions. Their faces were stone, as if a gang of mere hooligans were standing in front of them. Some raised their rifles, some grabbed their knives, and despite the impossible odds, they were still going to fight. The lead Spetsnaz stepped forward before shouting something in Russian, and then they charged. As expected, it was a short, brutal struggle. I looked back at Vasir. He appeared to be recording the entire thing, keeping only the Russians and the creatures in frame. Even though he only managed to capture a few seconds of footage, at most, he took off right after. I suppose he got what he came for. It was shocking just how horribly the plan had gone wrong. The Spetsnaz we were supposed to protect were all dead. Half of our team was knocked out cold, and while the rest were injured. Not only that, Vasir had apparently set everything up. A mole against moles. I could only imagine what was waiting for us next. The creatures had become stationary after finishing off the Russians. The details were all starting to align. These things were just machines made to look like biological entities. These were fake aliens. I could see Colt slowly pulling himself up as blood leaked from his nose and a large gash on his forehead. "Where did Vasir go?" he asked, spitting out blood. "He took off," I responded, after recording everything. The Colt's eyes turned wide before he suddenly bolted up. "That fucker can't get away," he said before sprinting back down the corridor like a bat out of hell. Everybody else was too roughed up to follow after him, but I wasn't. My right fist was broken, but that was about the extent of my problems. I started running after Vasir as well. We made it out to the underground complex and back into the woods, where we could see a trail of fresh footprints in the snow. We tracked his trail for about 5 minutes before finally catching up to him. He didn't seem too alarmed. In fact, it looked like he was just taking a casual stroll through the woods. Colt wasn't about to waste time asking any questions, immediately charging at him like a bull. He tried taking Vasir down, but was met with an abrupt knee to the face instead. I tried running at Vasir as well, but was knocked down before I could even lift my arms. It happened so quick that I'm not even sure what kind of move he pulled on me. In any case, I wasn't getting back up. It felt like my liver had just burst open. The Colt, it wasn't done yet. With blood pouring from his mouth, nose and eyes, he lifted himself up and started advancing towards Vasir once again. What happened next was a one-sided beatdown. Colt must have thrown over 50 strikes, with only a couple landing. Even the ones that hit didn't seem to faze Vasir in the slightest. He just shrugged everything off. Vasir grabbed the arm and delivered a rib-shattering kick, which put Colt back down to the ground. And we were both done for. Vasir just looked at the both of us and sighed. "Commendable effort," he said. "You boys aren't giving up on the mission. I can respect it." He leered over Colt. "But that also means it'd be dumb as fuck if I let you live." Vasir grabbed Colt's throat and squeezed. "You're a rat fucking bastard," Colt rasped out as the air slowly vacated his lungs. Yeah, Vasir said, nodding. "It is what it is." I wanted to pummel Vasir right then and there with every fibre of my being. But I couldn't. I could only crawl towards them at a futile pace. "I get to you next, buddy. Don't you worry," he said, grinning smugly at me. And Colt stopped struggling after about 10 seconds. "There you go," Vasir said, almost in a whisper. "Night, night." And then he turned his attention to me. If you'd told me 10 years ago that this is how I'd die, I'd probably laugh in your face. If you told me the same thing 1 year ago, well, that's a different story. At the end of the day, I had nobody to blame but myself. I never could go down the normal route, no matter how much the people in my life pleaded. No matter how much worry I caused them, I only ever wanted to live for myself. I still don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I suppose things could have been different, could have been better. Your thoughts race when death is lurking right in front of you. I don't know if time was slowing down in my mind or if Vasir was just taking his sweet time walking over, but I had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to regret. I sighed and closed my eyes. I never really believed in reincarnation, but at that moment, I tried. I just hoped that I'd do better in my next life. I was waiting for him to kill me, and I kept waiting, but it wasn't happening. Eventually, I opened my eyes, and Vasir was standing only a few feet away from me, but his attention, it was focused elsewhere. I followed his gaze, spotting Luke standing at the edge of the clearing behind us. One of his arms was completely mangled, thanks to Vasir, and he was bleeding profusely from a wound on his neck. Despite that, he was still there, holding a pistol. Vasir looked perplexed at the sight. I can't say I would have reacted differently. I couldn't comprehend what Luke was trying to do. "Didn't I just kick your ass?" Vasir said. "And now you're here, pointing that pea-shooter at me? I mean, I get it. I'm just as dedicated as the next guy. But this is getting ridiculous." Luke just grinned. "I didn't want to waste this on you, but I'm kinda glad that I get to." He fired the weapon, hitting Vasir in the chest, but not with a normal bullet. The projectile was some kind of liquid-filled capsule, staining Vasir's clothes and neck as it exploded upon impact. Vasir looked at Luke, the smugness in his expression replaced with genuine concern. "What the fuck was that?" he asked. "Try kicking my ass now, motherfucker," Luke responded. Vasir's face contorted into a grimace as he stepped forward, but he couldn't even make it a few yards before collapsing. He went into a violent coughing fit as blood burst from his mouth. "God damn!" he muttered. "My father once said, no matter what you have," Luke began, "it can still be taken away in a heartbeat." I never doubted him. He looked at me, tossing me a pair of handcuffs. Do me a favour and restrain him for me," Luke said as his injured arm dangled gruesomely to the side. "I'm a bit fucked up right now. No rush though. He's not going anywhere." I looked at Vasir, who was still writhing and coughing up blood on the ground. I looked over at Colt, still lying limp beside him. I was seconds away from sharing the same fate. Maybe I had. Maybe I had really been strangled lifeless, and this was just some posthumous hallucination. But I don't think the dead could feel as pissed off as I did in that moment. "What happens next?" I asked Luke. He shook his head. "I don't know for sure, but I think things are about to start moving quick." Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. Absolutely chest-pounding, intriguing storyline from the incredible mind of Mr. Outlaw over on Reddit. Huge thank you, Mr. Outlaw, for entrusting your story with myself. I do hope you enjoy my rendition, and I certainly look forward to more of your work in the future. Got a final with this one coming tomorrow, guys. Gonna put it all together in one, and of course add a timestamp for those of you who want to skip to the end. Of course, as ever, please do let me know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. If you're an aspiring writer or just want to have a crack at things like myself, please do get in touch with me at the usual email as on screen, which is dmtforestofear@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope everybody's had a fantastic week and enjoying a nice weekend with plenty of good food and good company. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.